So good morning. It's quite brilliant to be at Surge, and CNBC TV18's Young Turks is happy to partner with Surge in their inaugural session here in Bangalore. So I have with me Naveen. Naveen's been a serial entrepreneur. He's done a whole bunch of things like Paddy just told us. But what we're going to talk about today, Naveen, is his latest venture, the moon. He's going to look at mining resources from the moon. And I have to start by asking you, Naveen, there are plenty of problems to solve on Earth. What got you going to the moon?
Well, first of all, I'm also solving the problem on Earth, and going to the moon actually is for the benefit of humanity. So imagine when you go to the moon and you can bring back helium-3, that a small quantity of helium-3 could power the planet Earth for generations to come. So it is obviously for the benefit of humanity. But more than that, about going to the moon is not just about going to the moon. It is symbolic of what humans and individuals are capable of doing. There are very few times in the human history where each one of us have a chance to be able to do things that were only the domain of the queens and the kings and the superpowers. So imagine, there are only 3 superpowers that have ever landed on the moon. That's United States, Russia, and maybe China, because the lander did crash. So imagine when we, as a small team of people, are able to go land on the moon, we become the 4th superpower. Just think about it. A small group of people, we become the 4th superpower. And it's just not that. It is a poor immigrant who grew up in India. We didn't have a food to eat. So to me, it's symbolic of that, how any one of us who can dream so big that people think this is absolutely crazy. And dream so big that people think it's crazy and go out and do something.
So Naveen, I want to ask you, and that's where we come down to, how do you develop thinking big?
Sure.
How do you develop that thinking at a young age? So you have no experience in aerospace or space exploration. At the best, you have a degree in computer engineering. Your previous startups were all in the tech space. How do you get yourself to think about, I'm going to go to the moon and I'm going to lead this venture? How do you get yourself to think exponentially and not incrementally?
Very good. So I think, first of all, the biggest strength we have is not being an expert in the field. Because the minute you become expert in the field, you become a linear thinker or incremental improvements. That means a person who is an expert can come up with an incrementally better idea. Most of the disruptive ideas come from people who come from outside the industry. In fact, I don't have a background in the computer engineering either. And my first company was actually in the mobile services before there were smartphones. And my second company was in the information commerce, and I knew nothing about commerce. And then I did the B2B companies and the space exploration. And in fact, my next set of companies that I started under the umbrella called Blue Dot, they are in the health tech area. And why am I the best person to disrupt the health tech? Because I know absolutely nothing about the healthcare. And that makes me the most dangerous person in the health tech area. Right?
All right.
So the way you set your mindset is really simple. Take away the fear of failure. Dream so big that people think you're crazy. Unless you happen to be crazy, in that case, all bets are off. Right? Other than that, take away the fear of failure. And there is absolutely nothing that you can't achieve. And the main thing is to come up with a mindset of abundance rather than the mindset of scarcity. We all live in the world where we think somehow the things that we are fighting over are scarce, whether it's the land, whether it's the fresh water, whether it's energy. But imagine, we live on this planet called planet Earth. We barely inhabit only 20% of the planet. The whole Earth is a tiny, pale blue dot in our own galaxy. And there are billions of galaxies in our universe. And there are multiple universes out there. So when you think about scarcity, is because we think somehow going to the moon or going to the Mars or going to the Pluto or going to the different universe is not possible or it's not accessible. It is in your mind. It's like the aluminum we thought was the most precious resource 100 years ago. In fact, it was so rare that in the Washington Monument, the cap of the Washington Monument is made out of aluminum. It was so rare because technology did not exist to take the aluminum out of bauxite. Once the electrolysis came about, suddenly the aluminum became cheap. Same type of things are happening, the access to space. It used to cost billions of dollars. Now you're able to 3D print a rocket that can go for $4 million. You can print the lander completely out of titanium and carbon fiber for $1 million. So when you start to do that, everything becomes possible. So imagine how many of you who has gotten married and decided they want to go on a honeymoon, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, unless you take your honey to the moon, it's not a honeymoon. It's a honey Goa, it's a honey Hawaii, it's not a honeymoon, right? And same type of thing when you get married, you give someone a diamond. To me, that is a brilliant marketing by De Beers. But now they have become a commodity. So imagine when I go to the moon and I simply bring this moon rocks back. We change the game and making to tell the someone and say, everyone gives someone a diamond. If you love her enough, you give her the moon.
Yeah.
Don't promise her the moon, give her the moon.
moon.
And the Syna will say, I'm not marrying you for diamond, don't you love me?
So Naveen, so one is thinking big, okay? So you open up all of your thoughts. You don't put limitations on yourself. You think of the really big problem out there and you go solve it. And attempt to solve it. But when you approach that, so once you've laid out your vision, what are the next three things that you start doing? And maybe you want to put this in the context of how you built out the initial team at Moon Express. And I think that will be helpful for a lot of entrepreneurs here who want to tackle the big problem. So you kind of highlight your mission statement, which is your grand vision. But when it comes down to executing it, what are the steps that you must take to logically achieve that? Because it can't just be on paper, right?
Agreed. So it's not about the vision statement. It's not about the mission statement. It is about the passion, and not even the passion. You have to be obsessed. You have to be so inspired that everyone who meets you gets so inspired that they don't know what you're doing, but they want to be part of what you're doing. And once you do that, the thing you have to watch out for is when you're looking for a friend, you want someone who is just like you. When you're looking for a teammate, you want someone who is unlike you, who has very complementary set of skills. So while you have no expertise in the thing you're doing, you want to hire some people who have some industry experience, and their job is to tell you where the minefields are. And your job is to say, go ahead and step on that minefield, because I do not believe that minefield exists today. Just because it existed 10 years ago doesn't mean it exists today. The world is changing so fast that every single thing that we used to take for granted is suddenly changing. With the exponential technologies and the convergence of exponential technologies, the things that were impossible are becoming possible. Today, each individual can develop a healthcare diagnostic device that can diagnose the diseases better than the doctor. In fact, imagine a village girl becoming a village doctor by simply having a smartphone that can diagnose all the diseases. Imagine an education system that does not require a school or a teacher. It can be a peer-to-peer learning in a virtual reality sense. What if you are able to change the reality by using an augmented reality of what is real and what is perceived real? In some sense, everything that we know today, in the next 10 years, is going to fundamentally change. We are living in the most innovative decade of our lifetime.
Yeah. And I want to bring this up, Naveen, because you know what you're actually saying is some of our planet's grandest challenges: education for all, healthcare for all, lot of environmental devastation that is taking place, trying to reverse that or control that.
Absolutely.
All of that is going to be solved by entrepreneurs that are essentially using technology or application of the pure sciences.
Yes.
And over here, it will be interesting to note that traditionally,
Yeah.
it's been difficult for entrepreneurs who are trying to target some of these grand challenges to raise funds.
Yep.
You know, VC money is difficult to come by if you're trying to solve these problems. But you actually have an interesting take on this where you're saying that it can be philanthropic money. And the model of philanthropy has to change and has to start funding the solution to these grand challenges that will essentially be tackled by entrepreneurs like the bunch in this room today.
So I think, first of all, raising money is the easiest thing to do. Because remember, the capital is not patriotic. Capital flows where the opportunities are. In fact, in today's society, you can almost raise money better from a Kickstarter than you'll be able to raise money some idiot called a venture capitalist, right? In fact, I can tell you examples after examples. The venture capitalists are lemmings, and they have a brain of a rat, right? They don't understand what is going on. You look at Pebble. They went to every venture capitalist and they said no. They went to Kickstarter and raised $12 million, and then every venture capitalist could not fall over themselves to give them money. Starbucks is a great example. Howard Schultz went to every venture capitalist. They said that will never work. And rest is history, right? Airbnb. So my point is, the fact you believe that you have to go to venture capitalists, that's bootstrap your company by simply getting an idea, just getting started, and then you start to get friends and family involved, and then you suddenly start to use crowdfunding, and you start to get more and more people excited about what you're doing. You'll be surprised how fast you can raise money. When you believe in what you're doing, everyone around you will believe in what you're doing. The day you start to have a self-doubt, 90% of the entrepreneurs fail because they have a self-doubt. The companies are not killed because of lack of financing. They're killed because of the lack of belief in themselves.
How do you control those feelings of dejection
Yeah.
when, perhaps venture capital after venture capitalist is saying no to you, when customers don't come on board that easily? How do you prevent yourself from going into a low loop?
Well, it really is about the mindset. When you understand what is going on, and when someone says, I don't understand or I don't know, you simply chalk it up to, I hope someday you get as smart as I am, right? So fall in love with yourself. You have to believe in what you're doing. You cannot let someone, what you're doing is wrong. You can't let someone tell you that will never work. And when they tell me something that I'm doing that won't work, you know what I tell them? That's the reason I'm a damn entrepreneur and you're a venture capitalist. I'm the guy who's going to go out and do it, and you're going to watch me make history. I say, you are one of the people who love watching the history being made. You will never be part of making a history, because the entrepreneurs who make history and everyone else watches the history being made. So you can watch me do it, or you can be part of it.
So what was the first reaction when you told the people closest to you that you were setting up Moon Express? What was the first reaction from your wife and family? Let's start with that.
So first of all, my son told me, Dad, if you want to burn money, why don't you just give it to me, right? And interesting thing is, and he knows I'm an entrepreneur who does not take no for granted. And now he started his own company, amazingly successful entrepreneur. And my son Ankur, he runs a company called Human. But the best part is, now everyone he meets, the first thing they say, Uncle, we love what you're doing, but can you arrange for you to meet your dad and see what they're doing at Moon Express, right? And he said, Dad, I cannot believe what you have pulled off. And then I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change the healthcare. And he said, Dad, you're going to burn money. Why don't you just give it to me? And I said, son, you haven't learned your lessons yet. I'm going to go out and prove it to you that your dad, you may be the coolest guy, but your dad is going to always be the one who's always going to be your dad.
And about your daughter, I think she's helping you out with your healthcare venture. Tell us about how she arrived at this, because I believe there's a story that, she came up to you and said, Dad, don't force me to do the sciences. I'm not interested. I don't want to do this, and promise me you won't force me. So tell us that story, because I think it's going to inspire a lot of people here.
A lot of the things, when you are raising the children in an affluent family, it is how do you teach the children about what the success is and the value. So some of the things is, as opposed to letting the children know that we live very modestly and we don't have much money, and that's what my wife initially said, maybe we should live in a small house and tell our children that we don't have much money. I told her, the problem with that approach is someday they will learn to read and they will know their dad is not poor, right? So why not tell them that we have more money they will ever need in their lifetime or their kids' lifetime now, but let them know what matters. What matters is your self-worth will never be about what you own. Your self-worth is about what you create. Your success is not about how much money you have in the bank. Your success is about how many lives can you change. And if you start to go down that path and say, we all have a chance to live a life of success, can you live a life of significance? And once you do that, fundamentally it changes. The things we do for our children out of love are not necessarily the best for them. So Syna, the thing you're talking about is my daughter, when she came to me when 16-year-old, and she said, you know, Dad, I know you love science and technology. I have found my true passion. I know what I want to do, and I want nothing to do with science and technology. You know, the most dad would say, sweetheart, tell me what your passion is, and I'm going to find the world's best, and I want you to pursue it. You know what I said? Sweetheart, you're way too young to have a passion. I have not done a job of a father yet to expose you to everything. Once I have exposed you to everything, then you get to decide what your true passion is. And I asked her to go to Singularity University to learn about neuroscience, to learn about artificial intelligence, about genetics. And you know, she rolled her eyes and she said, Dad, don't you hear me what I just told you? I don't want science and technology. And I told her, sweetheart, if you promise me that you're going to go there with an open mind, wanting to learn and wanting to like, I promise you when you come back, you can decide what you want and I'll let you do it. She went there and came back and said, Dad, I have made up my mind. And my first words were, oh shit. And then she said, Dad, I have decided I'm going to be either a genetist or a neuroscientist. And I asked her at the risk of you changing your mind, what happened? And she said, Dad, you're so dumb. You don't understand. When I'm in school, I do science. I'm thinking, why do I care? It doesn't apply to what I care about. When I went to Singularity University, I realized that science and technology is the tools for me to do what I care about. I care a lot about the girls, their education and their health, and I realized unless I know about neuroscience and genetics, how am I going to help these girls? So my point is, understand as a father, as a parent, your job is not to just to say yes, but to expose them to everything. I took all of our children to every board meeting, every analyst meeting, the toughest negotiation that I had. I wanted them to know their dad is just as fallible as they are. I'm going to make the same amount of mistake they do, and never be afraid for them to watch you do things, because that's how they're going to learn. So the advice to you would be, make your children part of your journey. Don't focus so much on your end goal that you stop enjoying your journey. Because a lot of times we have so driven by the goals when we achieve, and you go back and look back and saying, for what? Right? So to me, being an entrepreneur is like having sex. You have to enjoy the process, not just focus on the end goal.
All right. I think on that note, we are going to wind this chat up. Thank you, Naveen.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Syna.